Good.
Lindy, are you handing stuff out at some point? Or
I'm sorry,
are you going to hand stuff out at some point?
Good evening.
when I'm told.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council President Robert J. Sylvia,
Here.
Vice President Paul M. Rodrigues,
Here.
Councilor Terry Flynn. Here. Councilor Henry F. Lombardi Jr.,
Here.
Councilor M. Teresa Santos.
Yeah.
Councilor Dennis V. Toronto. Councilor Barbara Avon Villas. We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Please join us in the pledge of allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 1, application of Flatways LLC, DBA Flatways, 1130 Aquinic Avenue, for a mobile food establishment license, a cart, for the 2020-2021 licensing year. This is new.
Motion to grant said license.
Second.
Any conversation?
Yes.
Mr. Rodrigues?
So I'm going to support this because it's a Middletown business. I know I took a pretty firm stance on the carts and the ones that how it would hurt the potential businesses in Middletown, but this is a existing Middletown business already. So I just want to make sure that you understand I'm not all over the map, but I'm sticking with Middletown. So
I'll just echo, that's been my consistency too. If it's a Middletown brick and mortar building, I'll support them over. So we have a motion. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Madam Clerk, what's the count? Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Item number 2, it's a public hearing as advertised. Public hearing remains open. An ordinance of the town of Middletown, this is a second reading. An ordinance and amendment into the ordinances of the town of Middletown General Fund, Parks and Recreation Fund, Sewer Fund, and Refuse and Recycling Fund, appropriating revenues for the fiscal year July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021.
public hearing remains open.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have anyone that would like to speak? Okay. Would any councilors like to make any comments? We can save that for later on. In all fairness to the citizens that are calling in with, especially or zooming in, we'll give them a couple minutes.
Make sure my volume's down.
Okay, 5 minutes? Been 5 minutes? Is anybody there, Deputy Clerk? Okay, I'm going to make a comment. Tonight, it's truly an honor for me to present to you the 2020-2021 budget proposal, a proposal that I believe places our town on a firm financial footing without placing the burden on our taxpayers. This is an exceptional accomplishment, especially during these unprecedented times as the COVID-19 virus continues to change our way of life. In addition to the health consequences, schools have closed across the country, government services have been curtailed at every level, and businesses of all kinds are struggling to remain solvent. However, our town is solvent and is prepared to weather this storm better than most other communities. Because our town councils over the last decade and a half have been preparing Middletown to meet any challenges. Middletown is financially and structurally prepared to meet the challenge of this virus because we have planned for this and have remained focused over the years. Beginning with the creation of the capital improvement plan by Bill Flynn and the council that he chaired, we have remained committed and disciplined and have slowly built up the town's reserves to a point where we now have a rainy day fund of over 6.5 million. Well, I guess it's been raining pretty hard for the last 6 months, and that rainy day fund can now serve its purpose for allowing us to address our highest priorities and balance this budget without doing so on the backs of our taxpayers. I believe that the budget proposal that I will present to you tonight, unless I miss something, addresses every budget concern that you, my colleagues, and department heads noted through our budget meetings. And I rechecked my notes, and the town administrator and I sat down for hours reviewing it to make sure we touched base on everything. Madam Clerk, could you hand those paperwork out to the councilors that I gave you earlier? While we must remain focused and vigilant towards the public health emergency that our community faces, we need to meet our promises to our residents in areas like public safety,
Thank you.
development, and infrastructure, which this budget proposal also meets. The budget that I'm presenting emphasizes and reminds us that we are committed to a government that is highly responsive to the needs and safety of our residents, and one that is forward-thinking about the challenges we face today and years to come. I believe that this budget proposal addresses the right priorities during these difficult times and will put our schools in a position to reopen in a safe manner, address the areas of concern expressed by my council colleagues during the budget processes, and most importantly, do so without raising taxes during a time when many of our residents can least afford it. Because of this pandemic, we have a lot of taxpayers that are out of work. There are others that are not back to work full-time or whose businesses are struggling to reopen and stay afloat. Now is not the time to raise taxes on our residents. I want to especially thank Mr. Brown, our town administrator, and his staff, who has spent a lot of hours with me on this, and all the department heads and all of my council colleagues on the council for your hard work during this budget cycle under extremely difficult circumstances. Let's face it, this wasn't like a normal budget cycle. I want to emphasize that the funding for this proposal is known revenue and has no what-if revenue speculations in the formula. If we receive any state or federal funding assistance, it will be put back into our rainy day fund to continue securing Middletown's future. At this moment, I'm going to let Mr. Brown make a few comments or a status report on the budget figures and revenue projections, and then I'm going to continue with my budget proposal. Mr. Brown.
Mr. President, did you want me to go through this budget sheet, the front sheet, or?
Well, what we can do is I can do that. I can You want to highlight, you want me to highlight the talking points that I sent you, and then as we go through later on with the motions, if there's any questions, because they're all part of the motions?
I will jump in if you forget
Okay,
something.
fantastic. One of the issues that was brought up, and I'm just going to be moving this around a little bit, but you'll see, you have a handout that I gave the clerk about an hour or so ago. The drainage ditches. We need to address serious safety hazards of our drainage ditches throughout the town. This issue came up during the budget process and was raised up by the vice president. Therefore, part of this will be adding $331,000 to this year's CIP to get this work done this coming year. Another issue that was raised was town hall staffing. We've had difficulty retaining an assistant building inspector because the salary is not competitive compared to other towns. Part of this proposal would be to increase that salary by $5,758, which Mr. Brown feels makes it competitive and marketable to hire somebody. Also discussed was the need to upgrade the part-time position in the clerk's office to fulfill a cost of $29,121. This will allow that person to assist in other departments as needed, and the cost will be paid by discontinuing the host compliance and adjustments from the OPEB. Our library, AC. A recent breakdown, as we all know. It's in bad shape and desperately needs to be repaired at the cost of $41,455, and this will be added in this proposal to the CIP. The MPC, which everyone supports continuing the work of the MPC, the Middletown Preventive Coalition. There's an additional cost to do so. To fully fund it is $86,294, which would come from adjustments to the gasoline and OPEB accounts. Civic support. The numbers were corrected to include the items that were in last year's budget, minus the $1,500. Police body cameras. In this current environment, we see it on TV every day. We want to be able to support and protect our citizens as well as our public safety staff. And by providing body cameras for our police officers at a cost of $66,738, I feel that we will do so. And this will be paid from the Rescue Wagon Special Revenue Fund. School funding. It's critically important that our schools are able to reopen for in-person instruction as soon as they can do so safely. And at the same time, we need to prepare to continue distant learning or to use a hybrid model if the pandemic continues. Whatever we do, the schools need to be able to operate safely. This isn't just an educational issue. It's also an economic issue. Getting our kids back to school is important for them, but it's also important for their parents to go back to work. It allows their businesses to reopen, and it becomes an economic driver for our town. So that the schools can operate safely, and we did this with an emergency order by Mr. Brown, we provided the funding for $121,036 for the PPE, protective equipment, and cleaning supplies to take care of our schools. To support learning during this pandemic, we funded the lease of new computers and software at a cost of $562,875, of which $144,817 will be paid this year. It's a yearly contribution in regards to the lease. This will be funded by us, by this proposal. I also believe that it's time to increase the school department's annual appropriation for the upcoming fiscal year. And I want to do this in my proposal by $418,313 over last year's appropriation, which would be an increase to the schools of 1.6%. I suggest, cannot do more than suggest, that it will assist the school department to cover its contractual obligations to our teachers, who I believe are the backbone of our education system in Middletown. I know it's not the 4% increase that the school department wanted, but when you add it to the funding that we are providing for the new computers, the PPE, along with the $60,000 we provided this spring for distant learning for computers, it's a very reasonable increase. It's an increase of close to $1.2 million. Part of this proposal is also to delay the pumper truck replacement. During this economic crisis, it makes sense to delay some capital purchases, not eliminating them, but delaying them for a year. In line with that, remove the new pumper truck from this year's CIP. This will be part of the proposal that we will go through in a few minutes. This proposal also adds a communication public affairs officer. We've had discussions about adding a new communications officer who would be responsible for updating the town's website and increasing transparency and community engagement. Someone who could make sure our residents are aware of what's going on in our town, including our town projects. I know that's been a priority of Councilor Toronto, and rightfully so. And this position would allow us to take that work off of Mr. Brown's plate, consolidate it to one person who will utilize it and gather it and publish it so that we can focus on higher priorities. The cost of that position is $55,690 and would be funded by adjustments to the OPEB account. So part of that, I think everybody has the handout from the town clerk that I handed out.
Mr. President,
Yes.
just, you missed two items on your
Okay.
list. Just,
What were they?
the first is originally the administration.
Yes,
had
I did.
proposed
Yes.
raising taxes by $136,000 to pay for improvements on the multipurpose fields.
Mhm.
And we
Thank you.
discussed that that would actually come from a reallocation of money that goes towards the OPEB trust fund. And lastly, by eliminating the need to raise taxes in the upcoming year, there is no requirement to raise taxes to fund or provide additional funding to the capital improvement special revenue fund. And that dollar amount is $54,000.
Thank you for reminding me of that. It was quite an exercise that the town administrator and I went through and trying to recall what everybody said, going back and looking at the videos and the questions that people had and the concerns that each counselor had, and even the people that called in. But I want to thank Mr. Brown again for allowing me to, for assisting me with that project. This proposal also, as we go through it, does some homework and reorg with the new fire department contract that we have, where we're rearranging the position of one battalion chief. And as we go through this, these proposals one at a time. And when we go through them, I'm going to make a motion, and then we're going to have discussion on every one of them. Okay. So everybody will have opportunity to weigh in on. Okay. I think it also shows what a well-prepared and a solvent town has over, and I'm not comparing this to anybody. It's not fair, but I'm very proud of the fact of the work that's been done over the years. You know, we have certainly done our due diligence, and we certainly have the right to crow a little bit because there's a lot of towns right now, and I said this the other night, that are going into this epidemic that we're not out of yet, that we're still going through, that are scratching their head. They do not know what they're going to do. And we can do this without putting the burden on our taxpayers. So at this time, Mr. Braun, you want to make any comments?
Just I'd like to thank the council for their
Sean,
support. through the-
excuse me, can you speak into that mic, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank the council for their support through the budget process. This has certainly been probably one of the more unique budgets that the town has been through, and certainly the most unique that I have. Just to echo what the council president said, we were in a very good position to make decisions this year because of policies, which in many cases are ordinances that we've adopted over the years, which include ordinances related to how we raise revenues, how we spend money, how we reserve fund, how we address capital projects, and how we budget for post-employment benefits. And in the document as amended tonight, we continue to meet all of those standards that councils before tonight and before you have set out. And that has made this a much easier process, I think, for myself and for Mark and Elaine in the finance office. As Bob said, I think there was a little bit of concern about the unknowns in the budget, and the budget before you tonight is based on known estimates or forecast. There is not, I mean, there's always a level of uncertainty, but there's no more uncertainty in this budget than there have been in others that have been adopted in the past. There is some numbers that are still forthcoming from the state, but they're not going to impact what we're approving this evening. I believe that this is a smart budget. It does help residents and businesses when it comes to continuing to make Middletown affordable. It's essentially our fourth budget without a tax increase. And that, you know, like the council president will bring this up. That's a number that compounds into the future. And those savings are achieved through smart spending in even more prior budgets. So it's important to highlight that. But just on my own notes about tonight, you know, this is a budget without a property tax increase. This is a budget with an increased appropriation to the school department. This is a budget that includes an ability to increase our ability to respond to emergencies and to rely less on our neighboring communities for mutual aid. This budget does put more firefighters on duty throughout the day, and that increases our ability to respond to fires and rescue wagon calls. And that was not an easy effort. That's an effort that started last year and is something that, you know, we follow through with tonight. There has been a lot of discussion about reprioritizing capital spending, but we did focus, or the recommendation is to focus resources on road and drainage improvements, listening to the community and our officers at the police department regarding how body cameras can enhance our ability to provide safety from that department. And, you know, the challenge that the school department has right now getting ready for providing in-person and or distance learning for the upcoming year. And I think I can't speak for Mrs. Krager, but I know the council being flexible right now is sincerely appreciated. And, you know, again, that's one of the efforts that it's really about children learning and supporting our young people. We did use fund balance this year, and I think that's important to highlight. It's upwards of almost $1 million. The finance director has gone through, verified. We're still, that spending isn't consistent with our ordinance regarding the use of fund balance. We still maintain a fund balance that's within the levels that we prescribed. And it's important to note when we look at it, we're looking at replacing revenue streams like those that are associated with hotels and meals. And as COVID is resolved at some point in the future, those are revenues that will return to the town. And will not, we're not supporting a spending effort that's going to create a structural deficit. This is exactly why we have a reserve to fund short-term disruptions in our revenue streams. And we're also able to maintain essential services and even just the one mentioned this evening, the Middletown Prevention Coalition, which was supported at the second budget hearing, where we've lost the federal funding for that program. We're basically able to reinstate that program into future budgets. Lastly, efforts that the council has started or have not been disrupted. We are working on department consolidation. We are working on senior housing. We are working on economic development. Those efforts continue. And we're able to do that again while achieving those important goals or metrics that we're looking for to best support the community in the upcoming year.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Just so everybody is clear that doesn't realize it, that the town charter, section 208, provides the town council may change the budget proposed by the town administrator, provided that the council also make provisions for balancing out the consolidated budget, which this proposal does. Okay. First motion is going to be reason. The town desires to improve the serious safety hazards of drainage ditches throughout the town. Motion is that on page 59, between lines 5 and 6, a row be inserted for capital improvements. Public Works, the amount of $331,000. The funds transfer in the amount on page 59, line 20, and Public Works amount on page 60, line 14, be increased by $331,000 and all subtotals be adjusted. That's a motion. If I get a second, we'll have a conversation.
Second.
It's been seconded. Conversation.
Yes.
Vice President.
Thank you, Bob. Nice presentation. On this particular item, on this particular motion, I'm happy to see that that there's some funds available to improve safety on some of our busier roads. I know during the budget process that I had spoken about Paradise Avenue, and I spoke about that specifically. I don't live on Paradise, I live on Prospect, which is very busy as well, but a lot of traffic that comes down to that beach either comes one of two ways. It's coming down Paradise or it's coming up Purgatory. And so the states, we partnered with the state to put sidewalks all the way up Purgatory. And I'd like to see some type of safety improvements on Paradise. Like I said at the budget meetings, I've never seen so many people, and obviously it's all COVID related, but walk and jog and bicycle and that traffic up and down that road is especially this time of year, is pretty swift. So I think that anywhere, and there's some deep gutters there, anywhere we can provide, fill those gutters in with proper drainage to improve the safety on that road, I think it's a big win. I'd like to see this accelerated at some point as well. I mean, Sean, I don't know what you guys have in mind as far as what projects being done, but I think this should, and just my opinion, I think it should be at the top of the list, is my opinion. So because of the traffic on that road and the number of people jogging, walking, running, biking, rollerblading, skateboarding, I mean, you name it, it happens on that road. And that's a pretty long stretch of road with no stop sign. So I think it's important that becomes a priority. So I thank you for that. I don't know how much this will get us, but I think maybe after we start some of these and see what it's going to take, I think maybe we need to revisit this during this budget season.
Any other Council Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. President. So because this is a CIP item, it's in the capital improvement plan book, it comes back to us again to decide what or how much we want to spend and on which projects, because the listed projects, and this is one of my questions, the listed projects are Indian, Paradise, Browns Lane, and Green End. So you just mentioned Purgatory with Council Roderick. So do we have the latitude to include things that come up under that CIP item to fix?
We do, but I'm going to let our solicitor elaborate on that.
I think the vice president was referring to an existing project on Purgatory with the state.
There's already a project on Purgatory. That's state funded. That's a
So-
state
so
road.
You would just want the state,
I
not
just
part
would-
of this.
I was
You
just
want the
making
state to do what
reference-
they are supposed to do.
Right. I was just making reference to the two heavily traveled roads to the beach.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's what I was making reference to make them sit, one's already one's already in progress, or plans are in progress for it. And one is, the other one I'm recommending, just my own recommendation is Paradise.
Okay.
Because of the amount of volume down there.
and Purgatory. Because the state's doing the Purgatory one.
Mhm.
That's what, it's not really part of the CIP. You're not proposing that we expand this one. Okay. So I have a question for Mr. Brown. So this came up, it's a definite need. I absolutely support it. I'm just, at our first meeting, or when we were talking about the traffic studies, and, Mr. Councilor Rodrick asked, what was the next step? And you said, bring it up at the budget hearings. And that is what has happened. And, some people, a lot of residents had responded to the pair reports or recommendations or proposals. And so I did mention some of those details. And of course, since then, Green End sort of came back up on the radar for our citizens, and emails came in that said, we need a speed table on Lower Green End. We need weight restrictions because the road is crumbling. Speed limits and stop signs should be enforced. And I asked if the public was going to get another opportunity to respond to the pair recommendations or plan. And Mr. Brown, you said, well, send the emails to me. And I did. And I was wondering if you had reached out to them, or if there was going to be an opportunity for the residents who live in these areas would get a chance to respond to the determinations that the study had made.
So those have been referred to the town engineer and to
Okay.
PAIR, and I haven't received a response yet.
Okay, is there a normal protocol that these citizens, because so I forwarded them to you, you forwarded them to the engineer, they're in the black hole, but I think
Well,
people,
there's not a black hole. We just haven't received a response yet. So when I get the information back from the town engineer, I'll update everybody.
that would be great.
Okay.
Let's see. And I did want to just throw out there, what we have heard on this particular capital improvement plan item, we've heard from people about Green End and Paradise and Indian because of the synergies, but not much about Brown's Lane. And, I did email Mr. Brown last week that, especially now that I'm seeing that there's a motion to not fund the capital improvement plan this year with the 54,000, the council may want to, when it does come back to us for a decision and a vote on the expenditures, we may want to do some or part of some and not all of it. We may not want to be tied to the 331 if something can wait.
That certainly is our option. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Next one. Reason. The town desires to support and retain employees at an equitable salary in comparison to others, particularly in the limited field of assistant building inspector. The town desires to provide necessary support for our town clerk's office by providing funding the part-time as a full-time position. It has been determined that host compliance software should be discontinued. It has been determined that some software licenses have been increased. My motion is that the building amount on page 58, line 32, be decreased by $15,299, and the town clerk amount on page 58, line 26, be increased by $29,125. The information technology amount on page 58, line 27, be increased by $12,516, and the non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, be decreased by $26,342, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. Do I have a second?
Second.
Conversation. I got Councilor Toronto first.
Yeah, I was just, I wanted to ask why it was determined that the host compliant was not going to work. I was checking to ask why the host compliant software in the initiative we had there isn't working and we're discontinuing it. I never heard why.
We're just finding that the software really doesn't provide information that's providing a return when it comes to identifying people that aren't registered for the service. That was a discussion that took place with the clerk and the building official. I think what we're looking at is that by possibly posting the licenses that are approved online and using our own hotline, essentially, that we can be more successful and spend less on this annually and be more effective.
Well, I want to go on record to say that was the initial recommendation before we decided to go this route. This was a big to-do in our meetings, that we go with this program. And there was a lot of conversations about residents and the people who were doing it saying, well, we can do it ourselves. And nope, we're going to spend money to do it. Now we're back here. So we made a mistake there.
We did. I think we tried it. We thought it was going to be better
More
for us
effective.
than it turned out to be.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lombardi?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to talk about that, but on that note,
Hey, can I just interrupt everybody? I'd like everyone to speak into the microphones, please. It's not just us, it's the people at home. I've heard all the past 2 or 3 weeks cannot hear us,
I'll have to pull it
besides
clo-
my loud voice.
I'll have to pull it closer to me. I'm kind of short, so I got to lean forward.
Yeah, that's got
Yeah.
some wire that
I
can
get
come
it.
out.
The
Yeah.
one
go.
person they didn't have a problem with was the vice president, though.
Go. Yeah.
Hey, listen,
Is that a true
that's a
statement?
true statement.
Okay.
So,
Councilor Lombardi?
and I wasn't going to mention host compliance because it didn't really resonate with me all that much, the fact that we were discontinuing it. But one of the reasons that I supported it was because we were getting some feedback from surrounding communities that it was working for them. But at the end, when it's all said and done, I have to rely on the data that Sean is relying on and the information he's relying on, that it's just not working for us. There is data out there that we get from Discover Newport on, who's registered, who's not registered through Airbnb. And I think some of that data, maybe we could use better at some point in time. I don't even know if we're getting it on a regular basis from Evan and his group at Discover Newport. But I'm going to support, discontinuing it, because I have to rely on the people that are looking at this, whether it be in the building inspector's office and the enforcement end, and whether it's Sean and analyzing the data. So with that said, one thing that's that I'm looking at here is the building official, and I fully support increasing the salary. I think you retain good people by paying them competitively. But we also have the enforcement officer position up there that we're going to have to be filling. And, I was a supporter of something that's going to be coming up later, which is the public information officer and person putting out information out to the public and updating the website and projects update, like, Councilor Toronto's issue. But that's $55,690. Entry level is what I'm hearing. Could tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that maybe we reduce that amount a little bit and we push that over to the enforcement officer's position so that we can beef that position up a little bit and make that position a little bit more attractive so we can get some effective people that will stay here longer. And we're not constantly having to change and bring new people in and train new people. I mean, Steve that works up there now, he's a great guy. He's a retired lieutenant in Portsmouth, and he was doing a good job. And I'm not so sure what his reasonings for leaving are, but I think maybe we should maybe relook at the number we're going to pay for the public information person. Take a little bit of that money, maybe just $5,000, $5,690, and kick it over to that position.
It might
So
be a
that-
good topic when we get on that motion, though.
But we're talking about the building official now.
Well,
Bob,
we're
and-
talking about the assistant building inspector.
Yeah, but that's in that same office, and you're losing.
Different person, though. Am I correct, Mr. Brown? It's a different-
This-
It's a different body.
Are we?
It's a different person.
Why can't we talk about increasing that salary, that line item, in the building inspector's office? We're talking about the building inspector's office now in one of the positions in that office.
We are, but you're making reference to another motion that's going to be coming up later in regards to reducing that.
Okay,
That's the only,
all right, point well taken. I'll take it up when we talk
Okay.
about the PIO.
okay. Anyone else?
Yes, please.
Council Santos?
Thank you, Mr. President. Town clerks, increasing the bottom line by 29,125 for a full-time clerk. This is long overdue. Long overdue. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. We have a motion, and it's been seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Reasoning. Repairs are vitally needed to the air conditioning system at the library in order to maintain operation. We all know that this recently popped up. This is something we have to address and something we have to address immediately. The motion that the capital improvements library amount on page 59, line 6, the funds transfer in the amount of pay on page 59, line 20, and the library amount on page 60, line 15, be increased by $41,455, and all subtotals be adjusted. And this will be the new condenser, Mr. Brown, that will take care of that problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, have a second. Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, reason. The Middletown Prevention Coalition, commonly referred to as MPC, provides supportive services to the youth and school system. The grant funding extension request has been approved. The town desires to maintain operations of this. My motion is that the Middletown Prevention Coalition, the amount on page 58, line 39, be increased by $86,284. The non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, be decreased by $60,284. The police amount on page 58, line 34, be decreased by $26,000. The community services grants on page 58, line 43, and restrictive grants in aid federal government on page 59, line 19, be increased by $14,260,000, and all subtotals to be adjusted accordingly. which would fill that position again. Do I have a second?
Second.
Conversation.
Yes.
Vice President.
So I'm really glad to see that this motion here is to fund the Middletown Prevention Coalition. I think for the better part of, Sean, 10 years, the last 10 years? Is that what the grant was for initially?
We've had a series, but it's been roughly 10 years.
Roughly 10 years where we've had this Middletown Prevention Coalition. And I've been fortunate enough to see this evolve and how it's taken shape in the form of the students that come before us and the work that's done by Lori and her staff and a lot of volunteers. And Rick, you've sat on that before, and I think that, you know, initially we've been looking at this day for the past 2 or 3 years, and we knew this grant would run out sooner or later, and we were going to have to make a decision on whether we're going to fund this and make it a town department, basically. And I'm glad to see that we're doing that. I think it makes a difference in the children's lives. It creates what they've done is create a culture of, and it's tough for these kids. You see them with the peer pressure. You see them come in here. I'm so proud of them when they come in and make those presentations. They're standing up in front of their peers, and what a difference. And I look at it as, if it makes a difference in only one child's life, and I know it's making a difference of more than that, it's worth it. It's well worth it. It's priceless almost. And not only that, think about how these kids are being developed for life lessons and how they make these presentations and also the awareness that is created of the numbers that are given to us on how the kids are performing as far as drugs and alcohol and vaping and all that stuff. If this coalition wasn't there doing this, we would have no idea. So I think it's critically important. I think they've done a great job, and I'm certainly going to support this. I think it's critical to the success of our children.
Any other comments? Council Lombardi.
Yeah, so I've got a history before I was on the council with this group. And, you know, back then it was the Substance Abuse Task Force.
Yep.
But what it's developed into, what it's evolved into is it's not just substance abuse. It's about teaching our kids to make good choices. It's about being responsible and good citizens. This is an investment in the future of our town's future leaders. Hopefully they'll stay here and it will pay dividends for this town. It's an integral part of what they do in our schools, whether it's the lunch and learn, whether it's the working with the student athletes and the coaches, working with the student athletes and the coaches and the contract that they sign, that they're going to make good choices. And it's about bullying, and it's about so many good lessons that will just pay dividends to us, many years down the road, long after we're all gone. So yeah, I cannot emphasize enough how happy I am and how proud I am what Laurie does and what those kids do and all the volunteers, the different sectors, and they're all volunteers. Every single one of them are volunteers. They don't have to do it. So again, this is an investment. It's money well spent. You got my support on this one.
Any other comments? Councilor Toronto.
Can you hear me?
What?
Hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Can hear you now.
There you go.
Mrs. Santos, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. This coalition is very important. My concern is that last year's budget was about 160,000, and this is half of it. So that means there's money that isn't provided here to assist in other activities. So if I look at this money is really for funding mostly probably salaries and longevity and things along those lines. So there's going to need to be a lot of town support behind the Middletown Prevention Coalition, because they're going to need people to help raise money so they can help offset the additional dollars.
Excuse me, I think the grant goes till January
Okay,
So I think there is additional money there.
I'll let actually Mark
Yeah,
answer
there's
that, but
Yes, this is just the increase for the department. We already have partial grant half of the year or 3 months of the grant already funded in the budget. This is to increase the
so
fund.
this would fund it for the whole year.
Yes,
Status quo.
provided by the
And what's-
coalition themselves. This is what they needed.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What will the total budget be for this year then?
I'll work on it. I can get that for you.
Okay, I'm just saying that, and I've been an advocate of this, and I think the teachers, the consolidating, getting people working together. I think the school offers some services like this. The Middletown Prevention Coalition offers a lot of services, but that's a department run by the town. That's not part of the school system. Is that correct? This department?
correct.
Okay, so I know my wife serves on this committee, and I see all the amount of work that all these folks put in it and the passion they have. So I'm just doing a shout out to the teachers, the parents, the students, the council, to help fund this group and help, as it goes along, because they need participation. We talked about maybe putting something in if you're going to play a sport in Middletown, that maybe you participate in this prevention as part of that. I know, Bob, you had said that.
Mhm.
So I'm just putting that out as a shout out to people should maybe, when you see this, get involved and help support it. I think it's very important too. So thank you.
Mr. Tangway?
The total budget would be 140,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And like we said, when we looked at this, Council Toronto, it was, this is to support it to us in fully for that period of time.
Right.
Because I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't recognize the importance of that.
Oh, it's very important.
And I, for one, always wear my purple tie on Color Purple Week, for sure. So I have a motion. Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to supplement what the line of thinking that Councilor Toronto was actually on, to put out there that as this group does go forth and that 10-year grant has ended, that they are going to be doing some serious fundraising to help the kids, and for everyone to be aware of that and to please contribute and help any way that they can
I'm sure
for
you'll
for
see.
next year.
I'm sure you're going to see the community become behind this because they've certainly made a difference. And I think it makes our community different by having programs like this. It enhances the quality of life for not only the children, but for the residents themselves. So we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Town council recognizes the important services and activities provided by its civic groups. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the activities of some applicants, whereby the operations may not be utilized in the current environment. The town desires to direct funding to applicants with critical needs. Madam Clerk, I provided 3 motions. Can I make this one motion? Mr. Solicitor, do you have a copy of this?
I do.
Can you take a look at that quick? I just want to make sure I don't see why I can't. I kind of broke it up, but
You can make that in one motion.
because I think it all spins off itself. Okay, thank you. So my motion is that the civic support amount on page 58, line 44, be increased by $1,500. The non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, be decreased by $1,500. And the general fund civic appropriation amount on page 60, line 27, be increased by $1,500. The town use of fund balance on page 59, line 30, and non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, be increased by $1,000 to reflect the transfer to the Parks and Recreation for civic appropriation on page 62 between lines 18 and 19. Insert a row for funds transferred in the amount of $94,250. That civic appropriations for the Parks and Recreation amount on page 62, line 25, be changed to $94,250. The civic support amount on page 62, line 11, be increased by 1,000, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. That all individual organizations and amounts be stricken for the civic appropriation for the general fund, page 60, lines 29 through 46, and Parks and Recreation Fund, page 62, lines 27 through 40. The allocations of civic appropriations shall be determined at a later date by this council. Very simply, we'll address them like we spoke about last meeting by resolution at council meetings individually. So do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any conversation?
Yes. So I just want to make sure we're clear, or I understand rather, that the money will be there, and as they come up, at a later date by resolution, that's when they'll be voted on by this council or the next council.
Individually.
Okay. So
Any-
it's like a civic contingency.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I think we discussed that a little bit last meeting. I think it's the best way, especially now with the times that we're going through right now. We really don't know what's going to happen
Okay.
with anybody. And like a few councilors, and I think it was Councilor Toronto brought up, who's the neediest?
Yeah, I think Carrie.
Okay. Oh, that Councilor Flynn, you brought that up. Who's the neediest? So, any further conversations? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Reason, the town desires to support its citizens and public safety staff by providing body cameras for law enforcement. My motion is that the capital improvements police amount on page 59, line 4, and the funds transfer in the amount on page 59, line 20 be increased by $66,738, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. This will put a body camera on every one of our police officers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any conversation?
Mr. President.
Councilor Flynn.
Just another clarification that this is in the capital improvement plan
Can't hear
book.
you.
This is a clarification that this item is, because this is not a format, I didn't really know what to expect tonight, so this is a little different than seeing just the lines.
I got this out this afternoon. I mean, I spent the greater part of my weekend and last week with Mr. Brown, and I even spoke to Superintendent Krager about this proposal. So it's been a busy week. I got grayer too this last week.
Yeah, I feel
I
your
don't know how
pain.
that's possible, but
Me too.
Okay, so yes, the answer is yes.
So it's a capital improvement fund item, so it will come back to the council at the appropriate time.
By resolution to make the purchase.
For the public. to know
Council
it's coming
Lombardi.
back.
So I'm 100% behind this. And, you know, for all the publicity that law enforcement is getting today, the negative publicity, and you see body cam footage, and you only see the negative body cam footage, but you never hear about when those body cams work in favor of the cities and the towns and the police officers and vindicate them from stuff that, you know, accusations. So this is an insurance policy too, for the cities and the towns and for the police officers. It protects us and it protects them. You know, all you ever see is the sensationalism and the stuff you see on the news when the bad stuff happens. But this also records the good stuff. And somehow, somewhere, you ought to get that out there. So yeah, I support this 100% because it does that also for us. It protects all of us and them.
Thank you. Any further conversations?
yes.
Vice President.
Sean, does this, I know we're insured by the trust, does this help us with our insurance costs?
I don't know the answer to that. I can
Okay.
follow up.
Just curious, anytime you hear something
Yep.
safety related, you kind of look for some type of rebate or
think-
discount, insurance wise.
It will certainly be helpful.
Okay.
I would point out Chief Kewer did implement body cameras for the Connecticut State Police, so he has been through this, and he has had considerable discussion with me about working with the police officers to make sure that this is done, in a manner that everybody is comfortable. But it is certainly an important project, and it's part of the 2020 pledge that the chief signed with other chiefs in the state. And I think it's a good proactive move, not only from the leadership at the police department, by the police officers themselves. So I think this will be a very successful program.
Okay, any further conversation? Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, reason. The COVID-19 pandemic requires additional cleaning, sanitizing, and personnel, protective equipment, PPE, so-called, to keep students and staffs healthy. The ability to provide distance learning is a necessity. The town desires to support its students in the educational process, and I believe this is extremely important. Motion that the town education amount on page 59, line 9, and the school department CIP appropriation / JFK amount on page 59, line 32 be increased by $121,036 for the PPE for the funding of the computers by lease, that the capital improvement school department amount on page 59, line 7 be increased by $562,875 and insert a new line on page 59 between lines 32 and 33 for school department lease proceeds with the amount of $562,875 to fund the debt service payments that the general fund debt service amount on page 58, line 45, the funds transfer in the amount on page 59, line 20, and debt service payments amount on page 60, line 16, be increased by $144,817, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. Conversation.
yes.
Vice President.
So I know there was a lot of back and forth about the Chromebooks and whether we lease, whether we purchase. I think it's smart. Obviously, we're getting a much better deal to lease them. So I think that's important. I'm just hoping that there is a going forward, and I'm sure Mrs. Kreger and her staff are listening, and the school committee, that there is a 5-year plan or some type of plan, because obviously today's technology, tomorrow or a year or 6 months, it's outdated in a lot of cases. So, and words like sustainability come to mind. So we may need to make sure that this is in the capital plan, that this is planned for going forward, however many years it is out, where we don't have to purchase 1,700 of them, where we can purchase 300, 400, 500 a year when needed. So I think that's important that plan is in place. Having said that, I think it's critical that, and it goes to show that how this council feels about education. Again, the 4% may not be there, but certainly the purchase of those Chromebooks for $562,000 plus an additional $60,000 on top of that a few months ago. So you're talking $620-some thousand over 4 years to be able to do this, because the last 14 or 1,700 are going to be leased. So I think education, how important education is, and so I think it's the right thing to do. I think that, and I believe this is what strong leadership, and that includes all 6 colleagues and the town staff and the school. This is what strong leadership does, and this is what financial responsibility and fiscal responsibility accomplishes. And it doesn't just accomplish it overnight. It accomplishes it over proper and careful planning and good decisions. So I think that this is a great move. I just want to make sure that there's planning in the future going forward for this, where it becomes built into a capital plan so that we are purchasing and updating those over 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the plan is, requires. So
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
I just want to assure the council that the school committee superintendent Krager is listening.
show the mic, please.
Yep. One issue that also came up, and I just want to share that with you. The school department has solicited bids for the computers. It wasn't, while there is a quote that we base the initial action off of, they are soliciting 3 proposals that they'll open tomorrow. So I want to assure that the council that they did hear your concerns about getting multiple prices that are competitive. They have done that, and they will act on those tomorrow to get the best price and the best product for the community, the students, and the teachers. So they are working hard to work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Council Lombardi.
Sean, the proposals that they're going to look at tomorrow, are they lease? Do we know if they're leases or if they're purchases, or is it could be either or?
So the purchase and the lease are 2 different things. So you'll have a price from a vendor, and then we can basically look at competitive prices for the leases also.
Thank you. And a quick comment. Had COVID not hit, and had we not been in the position we're in today, I would be advocating for something a little bit different tonight. I'm going to support this. I think it's the best we can do. But I would be looking at something a little bit different. I'm saying that right up front. That we're putting out a lot of money here tonight, and we're trying to do the best we can to support our schools. But under normal circumstances, I would be advocating for something a little bit different tonight. I want to make it clear that I don't think a 1-point-some-odd% increase in normal times is going to be, it would be enough. But this proposal, I will back 100%. I'm fine. I'm behind it. But I just want to make that very clear to everyone in this room.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes.
Council Flynn first. Council Flynn.
Just Sean, when you were giving your overview on the package that we did just receive tonight, did you say something was going on annually under when this motion was being reviewed?
I don't think I did. I think
Okay.
the council president talked about the fact that the total purchase prices that's being authorized is the $462,875. But there is an annual lease payment that the town would be funding of $144,817. I believe that's what was discussed.
Is that an annual payment?
It would be for the term of the lease,
For the
yes.
term, okay, so maybe that's what it was. I just
Term of the
wanted
lease,
Right.
to categorize it. Thank you.
4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
We typically would get a non-appropriation clause on it, so.
And the statement.
Well, that's what we're authorizing, but
and the statement-
maybe it'll come in lower than that.
Correct.
I hope so.
Council Toronto, you got to wait
I'll
1
wait.
minute. Council Santos.
I thought the vice chair was.
No, you're next, Council
Thank you.
Santos.
I'd like to clarify something. Mr. Brown, the 3 proposals that the school is going out for, is it for purchase or is it for lease?
They're going out for proposals for the computers themselves.
Right?
And then Mark and I and the school department will look at lease proposals that they have. Depending on what lease proposal they have, we'll make a determination of whether or not to bid out the lease or to do a negotiated agreement,
Okay.
which is similar to what we do with, we just did that with the open space money, right?
Yeah.
We were able to negotiate a favorable rate with the bank, and that was brought to the council for approval, rather than going out to the market and seeking out a rate.
So if I understand you correctly, they're asking for 3 proposals. And once those are received, it would then be decided whether or not it's going to be a purchase or a lease.
No, it's going to be a lease.
Okay, thank
It
you.
will be a lease. It's just a matter of, say I was buying a new car. Am I going to finance it through the dealer? Am I going to go to Navy Fed, or am I going to Bank of America? You know,
Okay.
we'll shop around for the best deal on the
We
debt.
go to town hall.
Yep.
Thank you.
Counselor Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a number of things on this. Budgets aren't an easy thing. I mean, when you do your home budget, you got to kind of make hard decisions. So I appreciate everyone putting the time in and the energy and asking good questions. I work in technology, so, you know, we had that council meeting on a Monday night, and this is when this was first brought to our attention about the Chromebooks. And there were a lot of questions. And we didn't get a lot of answers. In fact, we were told we had the numbers, but we never had the numbers. Even said we did, but we didn't. And we found out after that we would get the numbers, but the next time we got the numbers, it was actually an executive order ordering it. So I'm not, getting the Chromebooks, I'm for. How we're getting them, I mean, rolling it out, and I asked the superintendent, are we doing this because of the coronavirus? And she said no. Does anyone else believe that? Because if we didn't have the coronavirus going on right now, I know I would be buying 1,500 Chromebooks in a 2-day decision time frame. Because the decision was made by Sean, and I'd like to hear how he came up with this decision. Because we had a meeting that like 2 nights later, and I don't understand why you couldn't just wait 2 nights. I guess what I heard was we had to get it done quickly. So I'd like to understand the decision process behind it.
Well, I think right now, and I guess it does have part of it because it is part of this motion, but I thought we discussed that the other night. So I mean, it's almost like we're asking the same question over again of Mr. Brown. I think the answer that I heard the other night was, and I know this for a fact,
I was asking Mr. Brown.
okay? I know this for a fact. I want to let Mr. Brown answer, but I will say this in Mr. Brown's defense. I don't want to put him out there by himself. He called me. He didn't have to call me. And he told me this is urgent. This could be a showstopper with our kids. And when I heard that, and based on the feedback Mr. Brown got, I said, go with it. You got the
So when you
authority to
say
do it.
what did you mean by showstopper?
Meaning that if we didn't get this on time, it may be a delay. If the kids go back to school, we may not have them. And I think very enthusiastically, the vice chair of the school committee made those comments the other night herself, where she said they wanted to act on this as fast as possible because they were afraid it wouldn't be in the queue early enough for us to get them. But I'll let Mr. Brown,
Okay.
but I'm not going to put him out there by himself.
But I was a little confused when the superintendent said, this has nothing to do with Corona.
I was, but I'm not really sure she understood what you were asking her either. Mr. Brown.
I think this has been asked and answered several times. The school superintendent, if you look at the budget for the school department, the replacement for Chromebooks has been discussed. It was an item that they were looking at. The decision became more critical as the school department looked at its responsibilities when it came to distance learning. And the communication from the superintendent and the IT director at the school department was that we would have a short window to order the computers that were necessary to provide that technology for teachers and students to connect and provide education. Based on that, I made the decision that it was an emergency, that we needed to get moving as quickly as possible to order the Chromebooks so that in the event that they were necessary in September, we were ready and able to provide that connectivity. There were other requests from the school department that I didn't fund. They requested money for desktops. I didn't approve that as an emergency order. They requested money for network infrastructure. I didn't approve that as an emergency. Again, focusing in on students, parents, teachers, delivering technology, distance learning. That was the focus. The school department has a short timeline to pull together their educational plan for September. There were 3 scenarios. I think the other thing I look at is that there's so much concern by parents right now about students returning to school. I look at it from an economic development standpoint, not only for the parents, but the employers. We really need to be ready in September to get kids in the classroom or connected to a classroom. So to take the risk didn't fall in the calculus that was on my desk.
Thank you. So, like I said, I think it's important that we make that decision because there's a good chance we're not going back to school based on everything we've heard so far. She's had to submit 3 different plans. One that we don't go back at all, one we go back partial, and one we go back complete. This budget we have here right now is based on the kids going back to school full time. Is that fair?
No.
It's got buses, it's got transportation, it's got it all in there.
The buses from the school department.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about
The computer.
this budget
The
proposal.
budget that we're doing, this budget, the town budget, 2021, is based on the kids going back to school full time.
That's,
No,
no.
just the opposite. We don't know what's going to happen. That's why we
So
have,
not this purchase, but the overall school budget that they've submitted to us, it's based on the kids going back to school full time.
I don't get that out of their budget.
We've got full-time transportation in there,
But
full-time teachers.
in defense of the school department, I would say that they don't know what's going to happen.
I don't say they know, but I'm just saying the budget itself is based on.
If that's one of the options.
Okay. We haven't seen the budget that's proposed by the superintendent for if we go back partial or if we don't go back at all.
We have not. I have not.
All these things that we're budgeting for right now. I think Mrs. Von Villis hasn't asked a question on this because she's not sure what the funding is going to be when it comes back. She has asked one question on it. So this budget, the way I see it, is based on the kids going back full time.
A
If
possibility
they go
of,
back partially, this budget is going to change. The numbers are going to move around. There'll be different expenses than what we have in the budget today. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's a contingency. There's 3 plans for returning to school. And the superintendent and the school committee will need to make adjustments on the plan that is finally adopted by RIDE. And there will be things that cost more money and there will be things that cost less money. I think the other challenge is going to be, even if we went back to school at some level in September, we are still going to wait through December to see whether or not we stay open for an entire year. So there's a lot of unknown with the school department. And again, I think when I started talking tonight, I think in talking to the superintendent and to you, I mean, there is going to be some give and take. The school department, the school committee is going to have to communicate with this council and the next council about what it's going to cost to operate in the upcoming year until we know if there's going to be a solution to COVID or not. But I think the superintendent, I know from my almost daily conversations with her, they have been working diligently to plan out for the 3 scenarios. We've talked about what steps are necessary if there's a scenario where there's schools aren't open, and what savings can be achieved. I think those are all things that she's keenly aware of right now and prepared to act on in the event that those changes become realities.
We received a document tonight that was talked about, and Councilwoman Santos had asked what the savings that were achieved by COVID. And transportation was 283,000, athletic buses 38,000, coaches 33,000, and reduction in use of subs was $21,000 for $377,000 in savings. But then they used the savings for COVID-19 expenses, $165,000, and then staff FTE adjustment, courses, adjustments, and students needs for $236,000. So it was $401,000. So it actually went up like $34,000. So because of this virus, I'm assuming they're trying to get all this COVID money back through the CARES Act and things along those lines and hope that we'll get that. But this is what I'm saying. This is just an example of what's going to happen. The changes are going to happen if we go back to school, if we don't go back to school. So just an example of it. And so the computer purchase, I keep going back to that because I think the decision could have been made a little bit more openly and the council could have had a little bit more feedback, because I didn't receive a call from Sean asking me what my opinion was on it when he was going to make this decision. I didn't get a phone call, hey, Dennis, I'm thinking about making this decision going forward. What are your thoughts? Because I had a lot of questions from the previous Monday night. So I'm a little disappointed in that I didn't ever even got the numbers. I just got the executive order, and it was on order with this company out of Massachusetts without any other bids. And I went out and found the same model for less than what we were getting, 1,500 Chromebooks. Now, if we didn't say anything, if we just said, stamp it, would we be out looking for another quote right now?
Absolutely. No, I disagree with that.
All right, I think the
So
point's
I'm
been
just wrapping up. So,
stated.
so I'm supporting the purchase of these. It's already been accounted for. It's coming out of the rainy day fund, the town's rainy day fund. And part of the reason I was asking the superintendent if this purchase had anything to do with COVID was because if it did, she could use her rainy day fund, her $1.3 million. Mark, it said that if this was associated with COVID, the school committee could have used their rainy day fund to purchase these computers. Is that true? Or did
I'm
I
not
hear-
sure what they have in a rainy day fund,
I thought I heard 1.3 million.
or is that the total cost?
No, that was what I heard was in the general fund. Their
I
general rainy
can't
day.
speak on that.
There's approximately 1.3 million in the schools
Okay.
fund balance, but again, it doesn't translate into cash. It's an accrual-based number.
It's
It's a-
accrual.
So fund balance. So it's-
Right, so they don't have it available.
Correct. So it's a balance sheet number. So now we get into accrual-based accounting. So, and it's the equivalent of one payroll. So, and I had this conversation, Councilor Von Villas had some questions for me today. I think part of the rationale of just not saying to Rosemarie, you guys go buy it, is the fact that they may have other issues. And if you just burn through the remainder of their fund balance, instead of giving the school committee the opportunity to resolve some of those other issues they may have, it will all fall on the back of the town council. And that doesn't seem to be the most prudent way to manage this situation to me. You have a capital item. They had, this, if we go back to the capital improvement document, another thing that we looked at, the school department was requesting money for computers. There was roughly $450,000 that was being contemplated anyway for the replacement of computers this year. So it's not as if this is entirely out of thin air that this idea came up. So could you have forced them to use their fund balance? Sure. And all that would have done is probably cause issues with cash flow that would increase the amount of work on the town side. It also would have basically eliminated a lot of the fund balance that's available on the school side. And then from a sort of a financial management standpoint, you take that much more responsibility away from the school committee and you just continue to place it on the back of the town council, and these decisions just become yours. So that's how I look at it.
And I appreciate that, but we just heard about the ability for them to do it. I didn't say it was the right thing to do, but we just found out that they had the possibility of using their own general fund last week after the order was placed. This is what I'm saying. There should be a process of how these decisions are made, especially when technology comes around. There should be a statement of where we're at and where we're going. And I know they're looking for it, but this is a tough time. And as Councilman Lombardi said, he might be making a different decision if COVID wasn't here. Because I do know they were asking for another, I think you said another $500,000 for infrastructure,
COVID is here.
right?
COVID is here.
Sure.
It is mostly likely that the kids will have distance learning. And it's mostly likely that we will need to provide Chromebooks for teachers, parents, and students. And that's how I made the executive order decision that I made when I made it, so that parents, teachers, students can have, we have a certain level of confidence that we can provide them education. And I think that's the right decision for the community.
And
Okay,
Sean,
I'm
And
gonna
that's how
ask-
the
I think-
decision was
And
made.
Sean, I think you made the right decision.
Thank
It's how you made the decision. I don't think it's right. That's on my own personal opinion. You consulted other people. That's who your go-to people are. But when it came to
It's not a go-to person.
all the.
The decision
when it
was
came to
made by the
decision,
superintendent.
I asked a lot of questions that Monday night. I didn't get any answers. And then the decision was made to buy it. So I just felt that out of courtesy, you may have called and said, hey, I got to, this is what I'm looking to do. And do you have any questions or things I might be able to answer? That's my only opinion.
Okay.
You may
Mr.
feel
President, might I just weigh in on one point here?
I don't want to, I'm going to let you talk, Solicitor, but please, I'm not going
Very,
to keep
very
this going.
briefly, I just want to add in that in situations like this, we have a thing called the open meetings law, okay? And if the town administrator is now calling and polling and talking to every single member on the council outside of a meeting, you leave yourself in a position where there's a claim that you've actually gone ahead and violated that.
And he
So
could
there are
have,
certain
we had a
things-
meeting that night.
I'm talking.
We had a
There are
meeting
certain-
that
Wait a
night,
minute.
Peter.
Yeah, the solicitor has the floor.
There are certain things, where we have a declared state of emergency. There are ordinances and laws that provide for certain actions to be done during emergencies, and those actions were followed in this case. And ideally, yes, ideally, it would have been a different process if you were in different circumstances. So that's all I have to add.
My only point being is we had a meeting the following night. Okay? So it could have just very easily come to the town council the next night while we're all open. Sean could have said, I'm going to put an executive order in to order these. Does anyone have any questions before I make the decision on this? That's all I'm asking.
Okay.
It was that night.
Vice President, go ahead.
I don't want to talk about Chromebooks anymore. So I'd like to talk about the PPE portion of this motion and how important it is that this is funded, because the number one priority, regardless of economics, is the safety of our children, the safety of our teachers and our staff, our town employees, and our residents. That's our number one priority. Regardless of, there has to be a balance financial, but regardless of that, it costs what it costs. And to be able to fund this is critical. And I think we are absolutely, again, I'll go back to strong leadership and fiscal responsibility and being in a position to be able to do these things. And that's what is critical. And it doesn't happen, again, I know I'm kind of redundant here, and I appreciate you, my colleagues, allowing me to be redundant, but I'm driving home a point that it doesn't happen overnight. And these types of decisions over time, like Sean said earlier, when you have a rainy day fund or you're able to budget to fund it, it's critical. Number one priority is the safety of our residents, our children, our teachers, our staff, our town employees, and the administration. So I want to make sure that that's clear,
Okay, thank you.
along with purchasing Chromebooks.
Council Lombardi.
So I want to say one thing about what Superintendent Krager said when she answered no. I wish she had qualified that, because I know where she was going, I believe, in that when she said no, I think the school department's goal down the road was to have the one machine for each kid. And I think whether it was COVID or not, that was their goal eventually to do that. That's what I wish she had said. I believe that's what she meant when she said no. She just should have qualified it. Sean, I have a quick question for you. I know there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of contingencies, but do you know what the number was under the school funding formula that they were going to get this year? I know this was going to be the first year in a long time. Wasn't it upwards of 300,000 or something like that?
The increase,
Yeah.
I think it was roughly about 180,000.
Oh, was it that low? I thought it was higher than that.
Offhand, I think it was that, but
Could you get that to me at some point? All right.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I want to say about the fluidity of what's going on in this state today, I wear a hat in another life now where we have 375 kids that we've got to bring back where I work now. And the state of Rhode Island ride is dictating a lot of what's happening, believe it or not. We had to submit 3 plans. And it's changing daily. I mean, daily. And this is what our schools are dealing with right now. And every other public and private school in this state, they're driving this ship. So when you submit a budget, based on 3 different plans, yeah, they're going to submit a plan based on if you're going to bring people back full boat, that's what you submit. Because that's what you have to submit. But you don't know. We could be back distance learning in October. Full blown. Same thing where I'm at. It can happen quickly. And it might. Because I believe it's gonna. I don't believe we're going to be able to get all our kids back. And I think we're going to be back to distance learning again. And I will say this. I talked to a bunch of parents over the weekend. Because I was out walking around. And they've got to make a decision too, whether or not they're sending their kids back. They have an option to do that, not send them back. They have to notify the school department, I think, this week. It's a fluid situation, and I certainly wouldn't want to be sitting in their shoes right now trying to figure out what we're going to do or what they're going to do. So I'm
Thank you.
supporting this.
Mr. President, just a quick follow-up
Councilor
on
Flynn,
that.
did you want to make a comment?
No?
Okay.
No, thank you.
Just a quick
Counselor
follow-up
Toronto.
on that. I would agree. I don't think we're going back to school full-time based on what I hear and I see. I think we're going to go back partial, right? Because they got to do something to get the kids in kindergarten and, through the school, somehow switch it around so people can get paid to work so they can keep their jobs. And I feel for single parents who have multiple kids who have to go to work and they're not, what are they going to do with the kids? And it happened to them for 4 months. The last half of the school year was 100% distant learning. We did it. We had the infrastructure in place. Was it the best? Probably not. Not what I heard. Was it all bad? I guess so. So we did it. We did it for 4 months. And we're doing summer school now with our current infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented unique challenges to the economic planning normally engaged in by the administration. The town desires to minimize the economic impact with maintaining safety. It is necessary to delay the purchase of the fire department pumper, the backup pumper, in the capital improvement plan. My motion is that the capital improvement, the fire amount on page 59, line 5, and the proceeds from the capital leases amount on page 59, line 22, be decreased by $600,000, and to remove the funding of the lease debt service payment for the pumper, that the funds transfer in the amount on page 59, line 20, and general fund debt Fund debt service amount on 58, line 45 be decreased by 133,000 and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. The 133 is the first year of the lease payment purchase. Do I have a second?
Second.
Conversation. Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was surprised to see this adjustment because I didn't get that from the conversation that we had from the department heads and during the budget hearings. What I heard was that this was a very important vehicle for the functioning of our now expanded firefighter group.
Okay.
Staff. Thank you. So I'm a little shocked, and it's a CIP item. So even if we put it in the CIP or left it in for this year, it doesn't mean we have to buy it as things evolve in the year with COVID and all the unknowns and whatnot. I think it's a big mistake to pull it out of the CIP. I don't know what the rest of the counselors feel like, but I think how many years has this already been pushed out?
One,
Just the one?
just the one.
And I think the pictures that we saw, which I alluded to earlier in the budget hearings, showed rust and decay. And I mean, I don't know how to run the numbers, but I think it's a mistake to take it out of something where we could potentially need it and want to do it. But we don't have to. It just doesn't seem like it is as a threatening line item to me.
It's a 1-year delay.
I
And it's an immediate cost savings of $133,000.
But only if we pull the trigger. We don't incur that 133,000 unless we actually, when it comes back to us, we actually say, yes, we're going to do this.
Well, there was counselors that suggested that this would happen,
Well, what would happen?
that this wasn't looked at as a necessity.
Well, I'll pause for right now.
This is a backup, a reserve pumper. It's not a first line
But
pumper.
we only have 3 vehicles. We actually, we're down one.
Okay,
to-
well, I appreciate
full
your opinion.
backup.
Anybody else want to make any comments?
I do.
Vice President?
Sean, we're not down a pumper. This is actually going to be moved to a reserve pumper if we did purchase.
Right, we have 2 primary pumpers,
Yeah.
2 reserve pumpers,
Yeah.
but right now we have 1 reserve pumper.
Right.
So.
2 primaries, 1
There
reserve.
was considerable discussion. It is something that we need to leave in the plan.
I agree.
But I think there is, the discussion was to try to push this off for 1 more year. And I think, and there's no police cars in the budget. I think what I believe is happening is it's the council's desire to try to stretch out the longevity of the vehicles, a little bit more than what's in the present replacement schedules.
Yeah, so I know with the fire department, sorry.
Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Terry, I understand your concern, and I know you expressed that at the last meeting. I was on the fence about it personally because, in a budget where you're trying to achieve more economic stability with all the unknowns going on, is this an immediate need? No. It moves it to a reserve status, which is nice to have. It's not a necessity. And also, most departments don't have reserve pumpers. We have that ability or potential ability to do that. Given the times, if it wasn't these times, would I raise my hand or would I be for it? Sure, I would. Will I be for it next year? Let's see what happens. It's just too much, for me, it's too much uncertainty. I stated that at the last meeting. I was on the fence about it. The department, as you know, contractually, there was a lot of concern about understaffing. That department's already receiving a 26% increase. So I hear you. Would it be nice to have? Absolutely. Is it an absolute necessity this year? No. And I think if I was making a decision in my own home, I'd probably defer it a year. That's just my opinion. And if a reserve is needed, we have demonstrated that we listened to our firemen and our residents. We've demonstrated that there's not an immediate need. We've demonstrated, there's demonstration that we don't know what the future holds here, the short term or the long term future. But what we do know is that we have the right amount of equipment now. And do I think it needs replaced down the road? Sure. But at the same time, and I hate to use this word, that's what mutual aid's for. And I think we've demonstrated by reducing the potential, by increasing the firemen, with a 26% increase. And they deserved it, but another, 600,000 on top of that over 4 years, 133 rather for the next year, maybe next year. That's how I feel.
Counselor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, and I understand where you're coming from, Counselor Rodrick. I'm not sure that I've made my point. I
Okay.
don't see any harm in leaving the 600,000 in this year's CIP so that if we do have to act on it, it's there. But we certainly have the ability not to act on it. That, from what I understand how CIP works, it can come to us and we can say, no, we're not going to do it. It just sits there in the book so that if we need to, we can. Because right now with only 3 vehicles, that means only one team can be out at a time. And the third truck right now, that truck is already 12 years old, right?
Yeah, and fire
So-
life.
And it's number 2, it's a high priority. I just don't see, correct me if I don't understand the CIP, Mr. Brown. If it's in the CIP for this year, we are not required to spend the money. But if it comes up and we need to, it's in the CIP for this year.
You're amending the budget ordinance right now. So I think you're sort of mixing apples and oranges. So right now, the motion on the floor takes the item out of the budget ordinance that the council's adopting. The capital improvement plan is in fact just a plan. So it is not a document that we spend from or appropriate from.
So it will stay in fiscal year 21 in the capital improvement plan.
It will stay there, yes.
Okay.
This is the budget adjustment to the proposed budget by Mr. Brown's original
We
proposed budget.
just got this tonight. It's a little unfair to.
Well, it just got done this afternoon.
13 motions.
It just got done this afternoon.
I appreciate that. but it
Nothing
just-
that has not been discussed in these chambers prior to it.
Well, I didn't hear that this was something that
Okay.
was.
Can I just,
Counselor Lombardi wants
Sorry.
first.
sorry.
Counselor Lombardi.
Normally, you guys know how I feel about this kind of stuff. And I just, I want to know that somewhere down the road, I don't want to keep kicking the truck down the road. Without kicking the can down the road. But I think at some point, we need to do this, or the next council needs to do this. So I'm okay with with what we're doing, but somewhere down the road, it needs to be addressed. It is a public safety issue for the east side of town that does not have water. And when they need to draft out of a pool or out of a cistern or whatever they got to do it from, and they need another backup pumper, it's there. So down the road, I think we need to address this. The town needs to address this. So I'll support this tonight.
Vice President.
So I'd just like to clarify one of Council Flynn's comments that I don't believe is accurate. And I'm not saying that to dig you. I'm just saying I don't believe it's accurate. So you said if they will make this purchase, only one response team can go out. That's not true. A lot of other communities use different vehicles. Not all communities take a pumper. Some take a pickup truck to follow that. So they can respond. It's just in a different vehicle. And what we've been told is that the reason that the pumper follows it, in case there's a call, it would already be in service. And I understand that to a certain degree. It depends where that call comes in. If they're on the west side and the call comes in on the east side, what good is that doing out there? If the call comes in on the west side, that's great, and vice versa. So they can respond. But I understand your point, but they can respond.
I think at the end of the day,
Just
That-
one more comment.
sure,
Sorry, Mr. President. So.
that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So in the way I'm looking at this tonight is, again, nice versus necessary, and that is being taken out to supplement something else in the budget. And
Exactly.
it does have,
That's what it was
does
done
have a
for.
cost to the taxpayer. It's not that there's no harm in it, because there is a cost associated with that, whether it's capital improvement or anything else, it's tax dollars. The
Councilor
nice,
Flynn.
the nice thing is that in 2003 or 2004, on the Bill Flynn Council, and I was actually on that council, and so was Mrs. Sanos, and I'm not sure if you were there or not, Bob. I don't think you were there yet. It was Mrs. Sanos and I were on that council that created that capital improvement fund that's reoccurring every year. It was a one-time hit to the tax base. So, those type of decisions, and I don't want to go too deep in history. I think you get the point.
Councilor Flynn.
So just to clarify, so that, I can vote appropriately.
Mhm.
I disagree with you that it's a nice and not a necessity. I think I agree with Councilor Lombardi that, this is a safety issue, as he pointed out, for the east side. So by taking this out of the budget ordinance, you say that we get to save $133,000 in a debt service for the year to help fund something else. But if we don't pull the trigger on the actual buy, how does that save us? I'm just trying to understand from a layperson standpoint how exactly that there's a savings there.
So I think the savings, the major event that you have right now that we're managing is the hiring of additional firefighters. We're looking at 8 new firefighters being added to the department, 2 firefighters per shift. And the funding for that is partially coming from a grant application, which we don't know whether or not we've received. There's been some recent activity. We believe it's very favorable, our chances of getting the grant, but with the contract that was adopted, the effort to expand the number of firefighters, having $133,000 set aside in the rescue wagon fund in the event that we have to pay for those firefighters out of pocket is really important right now. And I think that's part of the calculus, and I know it was part of the discussion I had with the council president, and because I have advocated for the fire truck. I'm getting messages from the fire chief about the fire truck right now. But we have an obligation to finish off getting the new bodies into the department. And again, we're not necessarily going to save any money by deferring this right now, but I think we're hedging the scenario that we don't get the grant and we still need to add those additional firefighters to respond to fires, to make that second rescue wagon fund. And to Councilor Roderick's point, I think you need bodies. We can adjust our response. It may not be with a second pumper. We might have to do something different, a borrow pumper if our one reserve pumper fails. But I think we have to finish something before we start to take on the next sort of challenge.
Mr.
So-
Brown, how many pumper trucks do we have right now?
We have 3.
We have 3 active.
Yes,
Or do we have 4?
we have 3.
Okay. So we have 3.
2 primary, 1 reserve.
Okay. So we're looking to have 2 primary and 2 reserves, correct?
Correct.
Well, I believe we can wait another year. That's my position. Any other conversation? Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think that the concept that was introduced by the fire department is that the 12-year-old pumper should be moved into reserve because those trucks can be 20 to 25 years old by standard. Once they hit 12 years old, they really shouldn't be frontline. That would be number one. But I'm not sure, Mr. Brown, that your answer has convinced me that by taking the $600,000 truck off the budget, we're saving $133,000. The staffing is separate from the truck. It's not the same. I get the fact that you don't want to get into debt with the pumper because the SAFER grants may not come in, or you may need it because of COVID. I get that, but we do not incur that debt service unless we pull the trigger on the 600,000. There's no reason to take it out and totally eliminate the option to do it for this year. That, you just haven't convinced me that I should support this.
The message I just sent the fire chief was if we need a pumper, I'll bring it back to the council. And I think to a comment that Councilor Roderick said, if we need it, I would entertain it. Or I think you may have said that, someone said it, so I don't mean to read it, but that is the message that I just sent back to the fire chief. And I haven't known the council to not make the capital purchases from that.
Mr.
fund.
Solicitor, you want to make a comment?
No, I'm good, thank you.
You good?
I think, can I just add something for Terry, maybe to help with that? Like that, what Sean's saying too is if you look at general fund debt, there's going to be 133,000 transferred over. If we did purchase the $600,000 pumper, we would have to pay $133,000 lease. And that payment's not going to have to be made.
The point, that's the point.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We have not pulled the trigger on this lease. We do not owe that money.
But it's in the budget.
It's in the budget by
I understand,
approving,
but it
It can't
doesn't
be
mean
used
we're
for
going to
something
do it.
else.
by approving the budget. You're allocating that funds to be solely used for that.
So 133 of the rescue wagon fund would have to be earmarked for that
It'd have to
particular
be
debt
reserved.
service?
In
Yes.
order for the budget ordinance to be balanced, and that's the distinction between the CIP and when we're dealing with the budget ordinance, because the budget ordinance has to be balanced. If we're adding that money or keeping that $133,000 in the ordinance, we have to then, have revenue to.
But it has to be used for that debt service of a purchase or a lease that we're not even doing if we pass this budget? It's earmarked for something that,
Councilor Flynn, your point is well taken. You're not going to convince me. I'm not going to convince you. Good debate. We're going in circles.
I'll just ask one more question to
Go right
Mr.
ahead.
Brown, if you don't mind, Mr. President. So, Mr. Brown, you said that you just communicated with the fire chief that you could bring it back to the council. If we approve this motion, what would that look like?
The fire chief submits a letter that we need a fourth pumper truck. It comes to the council, and we amend the budget so that we increase, we basically reverse what we're doing right now. We increase proceeds from the lease would increase by $600,000. We would approve an appropriation from the Rescue Wagon Special Revenue Fund for the first lease payment into the general fund, and we would budget for the actual payment itself.
And that could happen in December or February.
Could happen at the next meeting.
Okay. You got my vote.
Can I just make one more comment, Mr. President?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So if we commit to it tonight, it's in the budget, it's in the CIP. We're committing to $600,000. Now, there has to be a resolution to your point. I get that part. In the past, once you adopt it in the budget, probably 99.9% of the time it passes during the resolution because, hey, we adopted this during the budget. Why aren't we doing this? So the point is, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So we're not only committing to potentially 133,000, we're committing to 600,000, and that's the difference. So that's how I look at it.
I was just to understand, oh, Mr. President, if I
No,
can
no, no, go
respond.
ahead.
I was just to
This is
understand that,
just, you guys just discuss it away. Go ahead.
that we weren't really committing until it came
Yes.
to the council
Correct.
for a final
That's accurate.
resolution. So-
Accurate. Yes.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
so long as the fire department has a path in this year, if something were to happen, God forbid, and they need to have that truck and they can pursue it, then I'm satisfied that the citizens will be served.
Okay. And nor would any of us, especially myself, if I thought it was a safety issue, I would have even proposed it. But we have 3 active pumpers right now. Okay. That was easy. Motion has been seconded. Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented unique challenges to the economic planning normally engaged in by the administration. The town desires to minimize the economic impact of debt service payments for open space. Motion that taxes levied by a municipality amount on page 59, line 14, and the non-department specific amount on page 58, 46 be decreased by $136,275 and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. Do I have a second?
Second.
Conversation. Council Flynn.
Mr. Brown, could you please explain this again? You were going kind of fast and then the motions went out of order. So
Sure.
can you
So
just cover this again?
the budget that I had originally proposed included raising property taxes so that we would generate $136,000 to pay for the improvements associated with the construction of the multipurpose fields on the drive-in property. And the council president has suggested through the motion to not raise taxes and that we use funds.
You can't hear you, Sean.
Funds that were previously associated with the OPEB trust to fund the debt service. So in theory, you're moving a debt service payment from one bucket to another debt service bucket. But we're doing it in a way that would allow us to not raise taxes within the community.
Has a zero impact on the tax levy.
Oh, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown.
Any further conversation? Any questions? Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, reason, the town desires to continue implementing its communication strategy. The efforts thus far have proven ineffective. It is most effective to have a position dedicated to this effort. Motion that the town administrator amount on page 58, line 23, be increased by $55,690, and the non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, be decreased by $55,690, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. Do you have a second?
Second.
Conversation. Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. Brown, this is the $57,000, I believe, for the communications and website.
Correct.
So it's 30,000 and 27,000 split. Do I have that right?
I believe so. That's the number I provided you that
Yes.
you're reading? Yes.
So, and I've had a lot of questions about this. So you say in the top, the reason the efforts thus far have proven effective. Is this the $4,000 that you have paid and, we were able to get information out on various social media platforms to which you provided the metrics of in our packet last week, or is that different?
No, so we currently have been paying, I think it's, the numbers in front of me, I think it's $22,500 a month as a base amount that's been pushing messaging out through the website and through social media to the community. And there has been some additional charges related to COVID, as well as communications related to the beach, where we basically exceeded the number of hours that we purchased, providing messaging out to the community. But our efforts so far have been mostly restricted to those social media channels.
Did you say $22,500 a month?
$2,250. $2,250.
Oh, $2,250.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So All right, so let me ask you, this 27,000 for the communications, when you say 30,000 for website, is that the Civic Plus?
That's moving to Civic Plus. So we would move from the homegrown website that we currently operate to the out-of-the-box municipal product, a product like Civic Plus or Civic Plus like.
And is the communications person going to be administering that, that Civic Plus, or is that going to be in the IT world? Like who's doing it?
Civic, it's sort of like, I was talking to Mark about this earlier. So the IT department would make sure that Civic Plus is up and running, that it's basically available. The communications person would be responsible for managing the website and managing the content on the website.
Okay, so the $27,000, is that so this is not a town, someone we're hiring? Like it's not a new town employee, is that true?
No, it's not true. So the proposal is that we would hire an employee to serve as essentially either as an information specialist or as the town's public affairs officer to basically take over those responsibilities that we're currently fulfilling with myself, a department head, or the consultant to create the communication, to basically manage the town's communication program and to manage the website and the social media channels. There would be a number of typical responsibilities associated with that person in putting together the town's communication program.
So it is going to be a town employee. Is that a union employee?
No, it would not be a union employee. It would be an employee assigned to my department.
But not a not a subcontractor consultant.
No, a town employee.
Okay. And is that a full-time position or a part-time position?
It's a full-time position.
So it's a $27,000 or some of the $30,000, is it $57,000? Like none of the 30,000 is going to IT, they're just going to assist.
So the 30,000 goes to Civic Plus, is basically transferring. So Civic Plus is to transfer over and host for the first year is $30,000. And then the price goes down between $6,000 and $7,000 for maintenance after that. So this would be basically an employee with a salary roughly around $57,000. We have some numerology running around there. That
I'm
would
sorry,
basically
you
be
gotta
a
slow down and speak up. I missed
it would
that.
be a full-time employee.
Okay. And after the Civic Plus is purchased for 30,000,
It's 30,000 to migrate over to the new product and host.
and then it's
So-
67,000, did I hear that right?
No,
In
50
maintenance?
No, 6,000 or 7,000 a
Six
year.
more. Okay, and that's per year.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a permanent position. You know, we just heard about this in our email. Never have heard that term before, Town Public Affairs Officer. You know, I've been asking about this position because it sort of just all of a sudden appeared and then it started evolving. So it's not something that we pay as services provided. It's going to be someone doing service all the time, full-time in the town hall. And the scope of services would be fill Civic Plus with content.
No, that's really simple. They would serve as the town's public affairs officer. You know, things that they would work on, I think, is tying together messaging from the town to the community. Presently, that is disjointed. I can give you an easy example. The superintendent and I are talking about how we work together to get messaging out about reopening school here in the upcoming weeks. That's a requirement that she has from the Department of Ed. They would be responsible providing information to the public through really the variety of formats that we currently use, whether it's the website in print or through social media. They would lead the effort in branding the town of Middletown. They would provide assistance in the crisis information that we put out. Presently, that is something that is not centralized. It's something that ends up being worked out between my office, the Public Works Department, police or fire, but that would be something that that person would handle. That person would be responsible for crafting press releases that go out to the media, as well as dealing with the news channels, the more the television networks, which are often calling. We would also use that person to help promote the public events that we're trying to do. They would be responsible for updating the online content and working with the departments to do that. And, and with the goal of, again, increasing the town's brand, increasing the traffic to the website, to the social media, and keeping residents informed about what we're doing. That would be, sort of the scope of their responsibilities. It would be very similar to the public affairs officer that Newport employs. But I think it would go a long way, not only communicating with the community, but also filling a void that exists now because we don't have the coverage in the local papers that we once enjoyed. So, but I think this has evolved. We haven't had a meeting where this hasn't been one of the larger topics that's discussed. I think I'm typically put in a position where, I'm trying to find 2 pennies to make a nickel. But given the opportunity of the discussion, and I think where we've been able to shift resources, this solution has the potential to move us where I would like to be, where the town council wants to be, in getting information, the content created and put online in the different channels, mailed out through the mail, just the type of communication that you desire. So I think that's how the proposal evolved. That's the council president. Actually, I was calling him an information specialist. He used public affairs officer. But that's how this has been evolving, I think, over the last days.
Council Flynn?
Thank you. So, once again, you may have talked to council president, but I feeling like a little left out of the loop because it came sort of as a surprise to me, the terminology, how it's evolved just within the last few weeks, just since about 4 to 6 weeks ago, when this first came up in the consolidation presentation on June 15th. So I guess I'm kind of feeling, I'm just saying.
Communication comes up at every meeting we have.
Okay, I wasn't done.
But you're at every meeting. You have this conversation with me. I think most people in this room have this conversation with me. And I've expressed that to the council president. So I don't think it's fair to color it that this is a new discussion. This is a discussion that we've literally had for the last 2 years in a great amount of detail. And it's not only a conversation we've had, but it's a conversation that we don't seem to want to resource. You want to hold me responsible for this very high level of communication, but I don't get a penny for it. I thank the council president for bringing it forward tonight because I think this is the first time I have a fighting chance to actually provide you the communication that's been discussed in this room over the past 2 years.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Go
Amen.
go ahead.
And yes, the issue has been talked about many times and how, I'm hoping that the search engine on this new Civic Plus will actually function properly and that things will not appear from 4 years ago or 4 years ago in one particular spot and current in 2 others. So I'm kind of feeling like host compliance. Okay, you want to try it? I'll try it, but I'd like to bring it back for discussion to see if it actually worked and we're getting what we expected from this communications position. Is that fair? Are we
That's your
allowed to
opinion.
do that?
It's your opinion.
It's not a union position. It's something that we can discuss.
if you wanted to get rid of a union position,
We have a
you have the
motion.
right to do that.
I mean,
So the program will work, the program won't work, but I think, again, this is the first opportunity. We've had a real discussion to resource it. And I think now more than ever, and I think we've seen that through the COVID experience and the amount of success we've had in reaching out to people with social media, that making the investment in the right person, someone who has the skills to get our message out as a community, to get the message out from the town council. We talked about this the last time. We have an opportunity right now, and I think it's important not only, again, and I use the school department as an example. We are challenged with communication because we're Zooming right now. We don't have the opportunity for face-to-face contact. So this is a real opportunity, and I think the times have really highlighted the need for it. And again, the standard that you're holding me to, this is what I need to make it happen. Not again, I can't keep rubbing two pennies together and meet the goals that you're setting out for me. It's impossible.
Vice President.
I think you've done a good job rubbing pennies together, Sean.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. So having said that, I just have a couple questions for you, Sean. So why is it in the town administrator's budget, not in technology department, or broken up amongst all the departments, since they'll be doing work from an accounting perspective or a GASB perspective? You typically will spread those costs out among departments.
So I think we're starting with it here. It could be its own department. It could be allocated out.
Okay.
I think we're starting out in this bucket simply from the standpoint that my responsibility is to carry your message forward.
Okay.
So that individual would do that also.
Okay. So
we could put it in a different department. But
yeah, I just was curious about, maybe it's just, I don't know. Typically that's what we've done over time.
Mhm.
That's how it's evolved. My second question is, it's $55,000 or $57,000. Is that total package, or do we have a total package cost?
I don't know. Mark, do you have the total package cost based on a $57,000?
So it's 82,000. We were taking the 27 from,
Benefits and everything, and okay. So I agree that I think I think there's a huge gap in communication. I think one of the things Councilor Toronto has convinced me of, one of the things is, project updates and the website. He's really hammered that home where, when you look at it, and Sean, to your point, that, we do hold you to a very, very high standard, and you're extremely hardworking, but there's only so much you can do. So I think if there's a communication gap like there is, whether it's website, whether it's updates, and all these things that you are proposing that this person's job description is, I'm going to support this, but I would like to see how it evolves. And are we going to get the bang for the buck? Like, the host compliance was mentioned earlier. It sounded like a good idea at the beginning. It didn't work out. That's what you do. You reevaluate and you come up with a different plan. So I'm going to support it, but I'd like to see how it evolves and if we're going to get our money's worth, and as far as updates and giving residents as much information as quickly as we can. I mean, I envision this as there's a council meeting tonight, and this thing is on the web pretty quick, and updates are done pretty quick, and there's communication between the departments because communication, as we all know, in any type of business, whether it's government, retail, whatever it is, it's key. You have to have that communication. If you don't, there's a lot of gaps and a lot of unproductivity with a lot of people. So I'm hoping that this is what this brings.
Councilor Lombardi.
So I've given this a lot of thought since my comment earlier in the meeting. And I will say that, as some of you in this room may remember, when we were talking about the consolidation of departments the other day and last couple of meetings ago, I brought the PIO, the public information officer, public information person up. And I mentioned, because of the way the print media and things are going, it's not quite what it used to be, and information's not getting out as quickly as it should. So I'm going to support this, but I have to tell you that in my own professional life, where I came from, you know, they have specific trainings for public information people that when I was on the police department, you know, when I was in charge of the traffic division, but anything that came out of my office had to go through the public information office first. We had a person, you speak with one voice, and it provides continuity, and it provides the right message. So that's one piece of this. The other piece of it is the head of the organization, Sean, as the town administrator, rarely are they the public face of the organization. I went from the police department in Newport to where we had one there, to Brown University, a much bigger organization where they had one there, and everything went through them. Everything went through them. And it's the same way where I'm at now. And it's not an IT function. You know, where I'm at now, they manage the web, they manage the media, they manage the social media. Everything goes through that office. It's smooth, it provides continuity, and it provides unanimity in the message that you send out. Everyone's speaking with the same voice. It doesn't mean you can't have input, but at the end of the day, that's the way it should be. Whether it's the police department or the fire department, you know, when it comes to a fire matter, they put out information, and that's what they should do. The police department, if there's an investigation, they have a person who's a spokesperson. But for public information, for emergency information, this is the way to go. So I absolutely support this. I just have one question. I am going to vote in favor of this. Sean, I want to go back to what I asked earlier about the building inspector's office and the zoning enforcement officer. Is there a possibility, as we look at the budget or as we go down the road, that we can increase the classification and the salary of the person who was the zoning enforcement officer? Is there money out there that we can enhance that a little bit?
I think my suggestion would be that, similar to what we did last year with Councilor Flynn's changes for the civic appropriations, that I just bring that back to the next meeting in August, and I can bring that recommendation to you, and we can amend the budget.
Thank you very much.
And maybe in
I'm
the
good with that.
meantime, we can look and see if there's some money out there available for programs like that.
Mhm.
Because there could be some federal money out there available for that as well. I personally think, and that's why I suggested this and put this in my proposal tonight. I think this is the type of robust community informational program that we need. I really mean that. I think we need somebody that's going to capture events and what happens in Middletown in a timely fashion and keeps them updated so that the residents of our town can go to one location and see what's going on. Councilor Flynn brought up a point. You go sometimes and you click on something that's 4 years ago. Councilor Toronto, and I said that in my introduction tonight to the budget process. Been saying this for years, that we want project updates. This is it. This is the person. This is the person to maintain those updates, to make sure that those updates, if there are updates done at a council meeting at night, to make sure that they're posted accordingly on a website so that somebody can go to it. Special events coming up. Anything that is prudent to the operations of Middletown, whether it be COVID-19 or hot sunny days at Second Beach, we want to make available to our residents. So obviously I support it, proposing it. And I think this is something that's long overdue. Councilor Von Villas.
Yes, I just want to make sure that this is an employee who reports directly to the town administrator and that anything that is released goes through the town administrator. We certainly, there's a number of us, but it's not our position to directly communicate with that person. But in fact, there should be a close connection with the town administrator. That's what I want to make sure of.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think it should be in the town administrator's department. I think he should be a direct report to the town administrator. And, I mean, Council Lombardi referred to the police department. Public affairs officer in any police department organization reports to the chief of police. Directly to the chief of police, because you are speaking for the organization. And at the end of the day, ultimately, Sean Brown speaks for the town of Middletown.
Exactly.
So we have a motion. Councilor Toronto.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad everybody's aboard on this because it's our current website, as Sean knows, hasn't got much attention over the years. I think Sean's probably received at least 50 emails from me talking about our website and how outdated it is.
Oh, it's more than that.
It's more than that, Dennis.
No, it's not. It's 37. We counted them this
Oh, I
week.
have a lot of emails into it.
154.
And it's not just me. People call me and say,
Yeah.
why do we still have the school committee's schedule from 2018 when it's 2020? And when I talk to Sean, first thing he says is, I don't have time. It's too busy. Each department's responsible for their own website, and it's not getting done. And so I think this is a great position. I'm was hoping we could fund it from within, that there was someone who we already employ that would be able to do this. Because even when we have state links, like I'll go in and the state, you post something at the state, it'll come down onto our website automatically. Well, that connection doesn't always work. And I'll call and say, hey, the connection's not working. And they'd say, oh, well, thanks for calling and telling us. I said, don't we have someone who looks at the website every day? No, we don't. So this is very important, especially with what's happening in social media and the lack of the papers these days. So this is very, very important. So I think there should be a good job description of what this position is going to be accountable for and how they're going to work with other departments. You know, I agree that, you know, I don't know. Sean seems to put another employee on Sean's team when he's already got, we always talk about how he's got so much on his plate already. I would hope we get some people who are driven, or maybe Sean could allocate. This would actually be in a marketing department. We don't have a marketing department. It would be in marketing. And the person in charge of marketing knows what the mission statement is and what the statement of direction, and this marketing is responsible to put the message out. They don't go to the president every time they're going to put something out in marketing. So I think we got to figure this position out a little bit more. I'd like to see the people we interview. I don't know if I have the ability to do that. Do we have the ability to look at the candidates that would apply for this?
Well, I think that's something we can discuss down the road. And maybe this is something that we can do and coordinate it with human resources.
Yeah, I
and,
didn't know. I'm
hiring
interested
policy.
in, better hearing what this person and, how they're going to fit in, how they're going to.
But I think it should be, like you stated, a defined job description.
Yeah.
That details what the person should do. But the person has to report to somebody. And a public affairs person has to report to the highest authority.
Yeah.
They really do.
Maybe we can talk to Newport in regards to their what they're doing with their public affair officer and how that's working out and what was good and what was, how's that working?
Mhm.
Take with a grain of salt, because not everything works for them works for us, or vice versa. And besides that, I think it's really overdue, and I'm excited for the position, so I'm supporting
Excellent.
it.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, the town desires to support education in face of the unprecedented public health and economic challenges that we're facing through COVID-19. In light of these challenges to town resources, the town desires to remove funding from the tax incremental financing, that's so-called TIF, to provide support for education. I want to make something perfectly clear before I make this motion. the money that's already been allocated to the TIF is in a restricted fund. It cannot be taken out. It can only be used for the TIF program. However, this motion is to take this upcoming 2021 year projected TIF money, not put it in the TIF restricted fund, but to use it to assist the school department. And that the non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, be decreased by $418,313. That's the known projected revenue for the 2021 TIF allocation. The education amount on 59, line 9, be decreased by $642,115. The tax levied by the municipality amount on page 59, line 14, be decreased by $1,060,428. The appropriation to the school department amount on page 60, line 24, be decreased by $642,115, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly. At the end of the day, very simply stated, it's basically a 1.6% increase to the school budget. And I'd ask that this allocation that we're allocating, we can't tell them, and I said this in my introduction, we can't tell them how to spend the money. I'd like to see it go towards funding the contractual obligations that are there sitting in debt for our teachers who, my opinion, are the backbone of our education system. So do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, conversation.
President,
Councilor Lombardi.
I'm just going to reiterate what I said earlier. Under normal circumstances, I would not be supporting this, but I absolutely would support what we're doing tonight. I just think it's COVID's here and it is what it is. So I just want to make it clear. Under normal circumstances, I would not be supporting this. I
Okay.
would be easy supporting and giving them more money.
Councilor Flynn, Go
Yes,
ahead.
please. Thank you, Mr. President.
just move the mic in, please, because we're having trouble hearing you periodically.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the increase isn't the 4% requested, it's 1.6%. And that 1.6, Mr. Brown, that's without the computers that were purchased on emergency
Right.
and without
Without.
the most recent PPE and computers. And I think I heard someone say that with all that added in, it would equate to 2-point-something% that they would actually get if you counted those expenditures.
No, that's incorrect. The percentage that you just said is incorrect.
Oh,
That's incorrect. It's the monetary aggregate total would be close to, I believe, $2 million, Mr. Brown? Requested?
I'm just reviewing a schedule that Mark prepared. So the school appropriation would be, so that unrestricted appropriation would be $418,000. That would be an increase of 1.6%. And then the additional money, so these are restricted appropriations
Mhm.
made by the town, would be $501,036. So you approved $60,000 in March of 2020. There's still $200,000 of technology replacement that's in their program, $120,000 that's in their program, and then the emergency funding of the PPE of $121,036. And then you have the computer lease payment of $144,817. So it'd be the 418, the 501, and the 144. But also understanding that the total purchase of the computers is, roughly 550,000 or whatever
True.
that number is. So those are the numbers.
Those are the dollars, Councilor Flynn. So
So but
the
I think-
percentage, they requested 4%.
Yes.
Basically, we're giving them 1.6% with this proposal.
Okay, yes, I did understand that, but there have been other expenditures by the town on behalf of the school. I mean, just, that's
That the
outside
town-
of that.
The town has assumed.
Yes. So, and I think I agree with Council Lombardi. Normally, I would not support this either. However, and I'm concerned that they don't know what their numbers are going to be because they don't have numbers from the state and the federal government. And we do not know what's going to happen with COVID-19. So I'm looking at these savings. Thank you for requesting this, Mrs. Santos. So just in a partial year, I know their expenditures because of COVID were a certain amount, but they saved $377,000. That's a partial year. So, you know, we don't really know their need. I am always worried about the fact that they do base their request, and their lien request is typically contractual requirements and mandates, and it covers the whole request. So I'm very torn about how to maneuver this. And so my bottom line question, Mr. Brown, is if the school department has a need, they can come to the council, an unexpected need, you know, when all the dust settles and whatever COVID does in the fall, winter, they have a need, they can come to the council?
Yes, that's what they've been doing. And they have come to us over the years on a continual basis throughout the years. When they need something that they can't afford or fund,
Okay.
they make that request to the council. Now, we just did that with the
Correct.
60,000. We just did it with the PPE,
Yep.
and we just did it with the new Chromebooks. So yes, the answer is yes, they do. And then it's up to us to approve it or disapprove it.
So I think, given the number crunching that has been done by staff and others, and the fact that we don't know what we don't know, and we are responsive to the request, that I would probably support this
Okay.
under those circumstances.
Thank you. Any other?
Yes. Sean, that 121, that's quarterly, right?
That pays for 2 quarters. So that was for the first and second quarter.
Okay, so that could, did we, right, but it could be
less,
more.
Or it could be more. So, and then.
So that's when they would have to come back.
Right. Yeah. So I think they're going to order 6 months, well, 2 quarters, not 6 months, but 2 quarters worth of cleaning supplies to make sure it's on hand. So, but depending on what ultimately happens with the opening of school, they may not come back, or they may come back for additional supplies. I was talking to Peter earlier. I mean, the other problem is they forecast a certain amount of stuff they need, and what they actually use might be different also. So I think we're going off of the best forecast that we have. So, but
So what their estimate was based off of which plan? Going back full-time?
going back full time.
Okay. So if they do go, I believe they'll go back partial. That's just my opinion. But they could use less. Who knows?
Correct.
Any other questions?
Or not really less, because, I mean, even if you're partial, you're still having kids in the building.
Mhm.
You're still going to need that supply.
Councilor Toronto?
Thank you. How much is the school looking to get back from the feds and the state at this time? Do we know? I mean, are they looking for $1 million, $2 million? Do we know what they're looking to get back?
Not in total. We don't know. And FEMA isn't really reimbursing much from what we've heard.
Do we know what they're asking for, though?
I don't have a total for everything to date.
What is the town asking for?
We're still computing to date. It's over 130,000 anyway,
To date.
which is a large reimbursement request through FEMA.
I thought I saw a larger number than that. But you know the numbers. In regards to the whole center, the emergency center we had and all that, and full-time work and all that. I thought I saw.
Dennis, can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
I
cannot
thought there was
hear you.
with the emergency center that we set up, and the fire and the work and the overtime. I thought I saw something like 300,000. So that's numbers why I'm a little.
But I'm also talking what we've heard that FEMA will reimburse. They're really strict.
Mark, could you move the mic in?
They're really strict on what's being reimbursed.
Okay. And if the school does get money reimbursed, it just goes directly to them and they use it for whatever they want it for, to offset what they've spent already with COVID. And like this number here, it's $401,000 due to COVID. Is that money
Right.
that they're seeking to get back?
I would hope so.
We don't know exactly what FEMA will reimburse, and there's other funding, but from what we've heard, FEMA is not reimbursing for computers. So it would have to be from other funding, but nothing is determined because communities still have not received any money yet.
But when that money comes back, okay, let's just say they send us some money. That just goes into their general fund and that would go into our general fund.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Toronto. Okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, annual appropriations to the Capital Improvement Program, CIP, are funded in accordance with Town Ordinance 35.10. The annual appropriation for any year may not be less than the appropriation for the preceding year. First increased by the percentage increase in the budgeted property tax revenues. Motion that the non-department specific amount on page 58, line 46, the taxes levied by the municipality amount on page 59, line 14, and the amount on page 60, line 7, be decreased by $54,355, and all subtotals be adjusted accordingly.
Second.
Have a second. Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Last one. And this is a little bit of house cleaning, but it does make a financial difference. The motion is that the staffing of one for the battalion chief on page 61, line 32, be stricken from the fire prevention column and added to the fire and rescue column on line 32 for the total of 4.
Second.
Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to close.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Who are they? You have who, please? Who was the first one? Okay, go right ahead. Name and address, please. Hello? Okay, let's go to the next one.
I apologize. I'm still here. I was unmuting myself.
Okay, go right ahead. Name and address, please.
My name is Katie Bean, 11 Sherry Lane in Middletown.
Okay.
I'm curious if you could speak again about where the money for these body cams are coming from and how are they being overseen so that they're worth the cost? Like, do the officers have the option to turn them off?
So that'll be a policy for the body cams that'll be put in place by the police chief, that'll be approved by the town administrator.
So and did you say that they're getting, was it over $300,000 for these body cams?
No, the body cams are 65,000, 66,000.
38.
66,000 total for the
Yes,
whole
yes.
department to receive these
Yes.
body cams.
Yes,
And we're earmarking this money for the body cams before we're even realizing how they're going to be utilized by the department.
the body cams are being utilized by a lot of police departments now is something that I think is important, not only for the residents, but for the police officers themselves.
Right, that's not my question. My
And
question
there,
is
there's a
for-
policy, when we issue firearms to our police officers, there are firearms policies and procedures. There are every kind of equipment and anything that is issued to our police officers, there are policies and procedures that go with that.
Right, so what I'm asking is, what is the policy and procedure for these body cams?
Mr. Brown,
So tonight, we're approving the budget. That's what the council's approving. When the actual selection of the body cameras is made, that contract will come back to the town council for approval. And to the council president's point, the police chief will have to develop a policy related to the use of the body cameras as far as when they're used, when they're not used. And that policy itself actually has to be approved by town charter by the town council. So that policy will be, along with the purchase, come back to the town council and will be subject to a public meeting at that time.
and just so you understand that it'll be brought back when the purchase is made. There'll be a resolution done when the purchase is made, so we'll know the exact dollar amount. And at that time, there'll also be probably piggyback with the policy that's going to be implemented at the same time.
Yep, the
So
town
just so
charter.
that I understand, the policy will be approved after the purchase is made?
At the same time.
The same time.
So if you don't approve the policy, you can overturn the purchase?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, President.
Good question. We have somebody else online? Chairwoman Kelly Simeone, go right ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Kelly Simeone, 54 Atlantic Drive. I'll be really brief tonight. I just really want to thank you all for prioritizing the needs of our students and the health and safety of our staff and our students. As you acknowledged, it isn't quite the amount that we asked for, but I can appreciate the circumstances you're all faced with this year. And it certainly does help us fund the salary increases and also helps us avoid some additional painful cuts that we would have had to make otherwise. So know that money will be spent wisely and responsibly. Also, just want to thank you for your support for the PPE and the technology. That was also much needed. Appreciate you affirming that tonight and just your support overall this year, despite all the challenges that you're facing. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Kelly.
Deputy, Madam Deputy, do we have any other ones? Edward, are you there? Edward McPherson, are you there? Okay, do you have anybody else? Dave Rodericks and Nicole?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Nicole, name and address, please.
This is Nicole Barnard, 88 Warrens, Little Compton, Rhode Island.
Dave Rodriguez, 755 Wapping Road, Portsmouth.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Nicole. Go right ahead.
Mr. President.
We have two questions that we were hoping to ask. We were wondering if there are any plans moving forward for the consolidation of services for the facilities and maintenance of the Middletown Public Schools to the town council.
They're in the process right now. Mr. Brown has that ball in his court. He's been directed by this council to implement that, and he's going through the steps as we speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now that we get this budget off of his plate, I'm sure he'll have some more time, especially not seeing me maybe 4 or 5 times a day. And in regards to this budget over the last several weeks, he'll have more time to spend on that consolidation project.
One other thing that we have a concern about is Rhode Island Council 94, Local 1823. Those are the members who do the maintenance and the custodial services at Middletown Public Schools. And they're going to be tasked now with spraying disinfectants all over the schools, and we're going to need special fitted masks to protect our guys from this stuff, and also personal PPE. I know you talked about that a little this evening. But another issue is that we have lost 4 members in the last year and a half who were doing this work. So we're at a skeletal operating crew right now. And we're like, from what our members think, that we're going to need about 10 more people to do what is going to be needed to be done to keep the public and everyone safe at the schools.
And we're kind of thinking that if we got our normal members replaced, maybe go with part-time people, make it a little cheaper, more cost-effective for the town.
No, that's a good idea and good suggestions, and this is something that'll be worked out, especially going forward with the expenditure of the PPE money, as well as the consolidation efforts that Mr. Brown will be coordinating with the superintendent.
So a lot of the spraying and stuff like that is like a lot more additional work. You know, that they want to have they want us to spray the bathrooms after every group comes out of it, like a classroom as a group, considered a group. If they go to take them in groups, then we'd have to spray the bathroom every time. So we're going to need like additional people for that kind of thing. And like I say, a lot of them could be part-time if we got our regular members filled, the ones that weren't filled as time went on here.
Understood. And again, that's not a decision to be made tonight,
Right.
but something that'll be made down the road, and any associated costs will be brought back to us for consideration.
Just wanted to put it on the radar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, David.
Thank
Deputy Clerk, do we have anybody else? Who?
Mrs. Gregor.
Superintendent Krager.
What our our school committee chair has mentioned already. I want to thank you as well for supporting and recognizing what the school department does, and also supporting the health and safety of our students and our staff. I think it bodes well, as you started this meeting, to say that our town is very forward-thinking in the planning for a day like we are facing with this pandemic, and all that hard work with the plans and with the dollars that you have set aside is really used in the most beneficial way for the entire town, and obviously the school department. So I want to thank you. I look forward to working with you as we move forward. I'm very excited about the communication specialist, because I think we can really work together to put the communication piece out and branding our town as one. So again, thank you, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
Deputy, anybody else? Christina,
Hi
name and address, please.
there. Hi, my name is Christina Monlos. I'm at 102 John Kesson Lane. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate everything that you guys are saying tonight. I just had one other question about the body cams. Was wondering why that couldn't come out of the standard police budget instead of the. It sounds like it's a separate fund. Please excuse me if I'm wrong on that, but just was wondering why it wasn't out of the standard police budget.
It's a new purchase. The police budget was reduced this year, and it's coming out of the CIP, so that later on, when we get the bids in for it, at that time we have another bite at the apple, and we take a look at them along with any policies that will be implemented, and that's why we purchase it that way. At the end of the day, it comes out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Any other ones, Deputy? Good. Council Lombardi.
No, I was just going to, because young lady's probably not on board right now. regarding the policies and the way they develop a policy for something like the body cams. And being a nationally accredited agency like our police department is, they have to meet a good number of standards. And I know there are model policies with CALIA that address specifically body cameras. It's a standard that they use nationally. But I can just say that I know for most police departments, the part of the policy is you activate it as soon as you get out of the cruiser, out of the police car. But I can tell you from experience that before those cameras will get deployed and before they're purchased, there'll be a model policy out there for sure. And a lot of it has to do with the national accreditation that our police department has attained and has maintained, make them as one of the premier police departments in the state of Rhode Island, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you.
And
Okay.
Bob, I just need to piggyback that. Sean, I think you said earlier, our police chief, for those of you that don't know, at home, he came from the Connecticut State Police. There's two number two in charge. He was one of the number two in charge on one side of the state. So I believe he's implemented this in the Connecticut State Police. So we're going to hit the ground running with this as far as policies and everything else. So I know that has to be forthcoming and it'll come forward, as Bob, you stated earlier. But I think we got a head start on this.
And again, to echo what Rick said, we are nationally accredited. There are established policies at the national level that we have to adhere to. Okay. Deputy, anybody else? Thank you.
Okay. Since there's no one else that would like to speak, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion second to close. All in favor?
Aye. Okay, motion to adopt said ordinance on its second reading as amended.
Second.
A motion and a second to adopt on the second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution of the council, levy resolution.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second.
A motion and second to pass. All in favor?
Aye.
Before, go ahead.
Are you going to make some comments before we adjourn?
I was gonna, but you go ahead first.
You want me to make comments?
Yeah,
That's a
we
first.
still have an hour and a half left. Go ahead.
That might suffice.
I lost.
So I would just like to say that, first of all, I'd like to thank, I was writing notes up here as the time was going on, but I'd like to thank our town staff, all our department heads, our town administrator for all their input and hard work during this budget process. It was certainly a different budget process that I haven't experienced yet. Yes, the dollars are the dollars, but how this thing came about and the timing of it was certainly hopefully an anomaly. And I'd like to thank my 6 fellow councilors as well for all your input and hard work and for listening. I think that's probably one of our biggest things that we do is listen. We don't always react at that time. Sometimes things take time to digest and to make those proper decisions. But I believe firmly in this case that we have a great budget in a very, very difficult time. And also we've prioritized safety of our children, education of our children, and the taxpayer's ability to pay. And that's the other critical thing. In this time, you do not want to raise taxes. And I believe that's what this budget does. So that's all I'm going to say, believe it or not. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. President.
Okay, I just want to reemphasize what I said earlier tonight about the work that my colleagues and Mr. Brown and the staff put into this, because it certainly was an exercise. It certainly was an exercise that I believe in the 12 budgets that I've done, I think this is probably one of the better budgets that we've ever presented. And I say that because of the time that we're presenting it in. I mean, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, COVID is not gone. COVID is still here. And we have to consciously remain open-minded to that fact. We have to consciously, and I assure you we will be. I want to make a comment about COVID. We were the poster child for COVID in the state of Rhode Island. We acted proactively, quickly. We established of policies that were replicated by other cities and towns. Mr. Brown and I, every day, for 2.5 months, every day, we're on the phone with our peers. And I assure you that they learned a lot from us. We told them what we were doing, our logic behind what we were doing. And I think at the end of the day, what the results are speaks for themselves. Not one of our public safety personnel to date has caught COVID-19. And we've responded to a lot of incidents. This part of this budget enhances our fire department, our fire personnel. It's going to afford our residents added safety and security for years to come. We have a long-term commitment to the town. There's been a long-term commitment financially to be in the position that we're in. I don't know of another town that I haven't heard the financial worries echoed every time I have a conversation with them, except for Middletown. We have financial considerations, but I think we prepared ourselves so that we could handle it. And it's obvious with this budget tonight. I mean, you think of what this budget did by increasing our school budget, the purchases that we made, and that a 0% tax increase. And this is a credit to those here today and those that were here, that we were able to do that. And this is the 4th year in a row. So with that, again, I want to personally thank each and every one of my colleagues. Mr. Brown, I promise I won't call you that many times tomorrow. If you promise you won't call me, we'll have a day off. And I want to thank you again, and I want to thank everybody for the commitment and the hard work that they put into this, because it's a commitment and it's hard work. It's astronomical hours. I mean, Mark, banging him for numbers. I contacted the superintendent, okay, extracting numbers from her. And I think that you've adopted a budget tonight, an amended budget tonight that is in the best interest of every one of the residents of our town, and I thank you for that. So with that, motion to?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. President.
Second.
Yeah, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.